Hey guys, Dr. Epic here. Today we're going to be ranking the Citadel races of Mass Effect from best to worst. To decide this, we will be looking at their lore and how well they play their roles in the game. To make this interesting, I'll also speculate on the potential for the Asari in Mass Effect 4 and take this into account as well. We will also be looking at the X factor, meaning the little extra or charm or whatever, which is a largely subjective metric, will likely be the deciding factor, so you are more than welcome to express your opinions in the comments if you have your own X factor or own preferences.
Hallelujah, hallelujah.
Alright, let's evaluate these races. I know that intro sounds kind of suspect, but there's no way to say this without it sounding weird, so just be glad the intro doesn't sound something like, not all races are created equal, so let's rank them. Okay, alright, it could have been worse, is what I'm saying. Anyways, let's get racist. The Citadel races are the Asari, Durell, Elcor, Hanar, Humans, Keepers, Salarians, Durians, and the Volus. First video for this series will be the Asari. The Asari are known as the e-girls of the galaxy. Everybody wants their favor, either politically or otherwise. For some reason, every single species in the galaxy find them sexually attractive and beautiful, even the Krogan. At the same time, Asari are a powerful galactic faction with a capable military presence, fierce special commando forces, and advanced technology and sciences, putting them at the top of the galactic food chain of politics, at least in terms of soft power. And by that I'm referring to their strong diplomatic skills, though their military is definitely also one of the strongest in terms of raw, hard power. The Asari boast a big advanced navy with ships such as the Destiny Ascension flagship. Asari military units are organized in a kind of a cool way, in my opinion, almost like a galactic militia, but still professional. Mass Effect Wikipedia describes the Asari military fittingly as a collection of tribal warrior bands with no national structure, where each community organizes its own unit as the locals see fit and elect a leader to command them. End quote. This results in very diversely organized combat units with, quote, units from populous cities tending to be large and well equipped, while those from farm villages may be only a few Asari with small arms. There is no uniform. Everyone wears what they like. End quote. The Asari warriors are very skilled and feared, not only because of the wealthy and technologically advanced societies they spawn in, but also because they can live up to 1,000 years, giving them crazy time to get good. Asari biology is in my opinion one of the most unique and fascinating in the game, mainly their monogenderism, natural biotic abilities, their melding abilities, and ability to reproduce across species borders. A good example of feared Asari warriors are the notorious Huntresses or Commandos, as well as the notorious Justicars. The Justicars also telling us a lot about Asari religion and spirituality, which is also a cool and interesting part of the Asari culture, and it's kind of reminiscent of some kind of space Buddhism. Their societal structure as republics and a governance form similar to some form of direct democracy is fairly interesting to see implemented in a galactic setting, even if it's only visible in the background lore and codex, and not so much directly in the game. There's no doubt the Asari have a significantly fleshed out lore, background, culture and history. They're easily one of the most important species in Mass Effect due to their role in Mass Effect's history, like the discovery of the Citadel, formation of the Council, the Rachni Wars, Spectres, and the list basically just goes on. Furthermore, they play a huge role in the story of the games themselves, notable examples including the contributions from Liara, or the Asari Counselor, the Asari World Ilium, Thessia, and of course the secret hidden on Thessia revealed in Mass Effect 3. The Asari also play a significant role in the Andromeda Initiative, bringing their sophisticated intelligence and culture aboard to help build a new and better society in Andromeda, at least as far as possible, with the Scourge whipping the Milky Way visitors hard. The last fun fact to address is this piece of trivia from the Mass Effect Wikipedia. Quote, according to Mordin Solus, offspring of Asari Vorcha matings are allergic to dairy products. However,
Pelesaria Besaili
suggests that Asari no longer have allergies, counter to Mordin's claim. End quote. Massive plot hole, you guys. Massive plot hole.
unplayable.
I think the Asari are easily leaning towards being a Garrus tier species, which is very good. Yeah, they're not very original in their design, as they're visually literally just blue humans with tentacles on their head. But they offer so much more in lore and characteristics that they're unique and interesting in my eyes nonetheless. So please, BioWare, let us play as Asari in Mass Effect 4. You can even reuse human animations, human armor, voices, everything. Just please, let us play as the blue people. The Avatar game isn't cutting it. Speaking of Mass Effect 4, a question is being begged. What role will the Asari have in the next game? I will weigh this as well in the question of what tier the Asari belong in, as I think the potential is something that I want to take into account. So it's time for some good old-fashioned Mass Effect speculation. I do like to base things in lore from the game and stuff established throughout the story, as well as relevant trailers for the game, if we can presume them to be showing us canon stuff. Mass Effect 4 speculation and theory crafting is a very unique type of exercise, because we all know Mass Effect 3 had several majorly different endings depending on your choices. And we can roughly categorize them as the destroy ending, or the red ending, control ending, or the blue ending, synthesis ending, the green ending, and refusal ending.
So be it.
We fought the Reapers, but we failed to stop them.
The Giga Chad Big Balls ending. I think the destroy ending is going to end up as the canon ending for the sequels, and would be very surprised, perhaps positively, if they ended up choosing one of the others. But since I want to do my job properly, I'll speculate on the Asari's role in all 4 of these different scenarios. If the refusal ending is a canon scenario, it's hard to see how the next game would play out, but I imagine the story likely would be you trying to stop the Reapers, or someone aligned with some Reapers perhaps, from returning once again. Either as a you would play either as a hero from awakened from stasis, being introduced to a new world, a new cycle, new society, new races, a new Milky Way really. Alternatively, the story could even be set after this new cycle with a new era of species using Liara's data cache help, perhaps, and having defeated the Reapers. In the latter scenario, I imagine the Asari would be an extinct ancient mentor-like species, greatly admired by the next generation, like, you know, the Protheans are to us. And probably some species would religiously worship the Asari as well, like the Hanar did to the Protheans. Another possible way for Asari to survive in this scenario would be if there were any Asari frozen down in the Milky Way on hidden worlds like the Protheans tried and failed to do. If the vastly more advanced Protheans failed at this, I'm highly skeptical that even the advanced Asari could pull it off, but you know, who knows. From Mass Effect 3 cinematics here, we know that Liara managed to make a drone, VI or record or something, to aid the coming generations and civilizations of new aliens. The Asari role vis-a-vis the next cycle's races would then be a sort of similar to the Prothean's ancient mentor role, delivering the Crucible data and all the other Reaper data to the next cycle. This could be enough to let this civilization defeat the Reapers. If Asari survivors from Andromeda were to return as well, then I would imagine the next generation would react in interesting ways, almost like a second coming of the Lord. The Asari, like any other OG Milky Way race returning from Andromeda, could possibly even face more hostile reactions after some time from the next generation Milky Way races. And one thing we have to remember is that a lot of Asari fled to Andromeda with the Arcs. These Asari wouldn't have nearly as much of their old strength though, so I'm skeptical how much they could contribute with in the short term if they were to return to Milky Way and fight some kind of big antagonist. Of course, if you wait say 40,000 years, which is just 40 Asari generations actually, allow them to intelligently plan in peace in the Andromeda galaxy how to strike the Reapers in dark space. They could utilize their Asari intelligence, their long lifespan, which would allow them probably better long-term planning skills than most races. The Asari sophistication and traditions for advanced technology and design. Then, yeah, the Asari could be an important and decisive factor in how to permanently stop the Reapers in such a scenario. In a war against the next-gen Milky Way races, a rebuilt Asari civilization could pose a serious threat, I would believe. If the control ending is canon, it's difficult to say how the story would be in that scenario. The control ending is supposed to be a paradise ending where the Reapers ensure peace, stability and prosperity for all under the careful guidance of a wise Shepherd AI construct. However, if this AI is corrupted, malicious or full-blown renegade mode, just a renegade AI Shepherd, then this scenario would quickly become a nightmare realm, let's be honest. And in that kind of scenario I would imagine it turning out either to be a return to the classic cycle pattern of the Reapers, or Shepard basically becoming Anne, like I have no mouth and I must scream. Half-Life 2, Dead Space, or a Matrix scenario, with Reapers being like Lovecraftian overlords and you're fighting a huge-ass uphill battle against them like an interstellar rebel. Could be very interesting, but wouldn't be very classic Mass Effect, so I'm kind of skeptical that they would dare to try something this new. But anyway, in this scenario, the Asari would likely be equally oppressed as all the other races. Their long lifespan could make them extra valuable assets to the rebellion, with all the knowledge they gain throughout their life. Also, their natural biotics would perhaps make them harder to subjugate, as an Asari wouldn't really ever be unarmed. Banshees, as we know, are very powerful Reaper units, so I imagine the Reapers would want to keep some Asari around to perhaps make more of those, if that's how that life cycle works. So the Asari knowledge, biotics, and long-term planning skills could be the key to success of a rebellion against the evil Shepard AI, which I'm going to refer to as the Renegade Shepard AI because I think that's kinda describing. If the synthesis ending was canon, it's hard to imagine any conflict here as well. This is also supposed to be a paradise ending with synthetic and organic life emerging into one cooperative whole, you can say. In this scenario, the Reapers would also still be around and presumably nice. Much like the Control ending, conflict in this story would likely stem from who's controlling the Reapers or who has them on their side. And the Asari would play largely the same role in the Synthesis universe as they do in the Control universe, if there is to be some kind of conflict for us. In both the Synthesis and Control ending, like I said on the Refusal ending, an Asari civilization rebuilt in Andromeda could also be a strong factor in retaking the Milky Way and aiding the rebellion. In the Destroy ending universe, however, then we are looking at the potential for a much more classic Mass Effect story in the Milky Way. Because here I imagine the Asari would utilize all their unique abilities and traditional soft and hard power to re-establish their power level in the galaxy. A lot of the Asari's power stems from the fact they were the first to explore the galaxy and could set the foundations for galactic societies in their image from the get-go. And after the devastating Reaper War, the reset button has largely been hit, so the Asari homeworld, like many other colonies and homeworlds, were hit hard. So this could mean it's more of a free-for-all, as now there is much more competition for the Asari if they want to be the dominatrix of the Milky Way. Soft power in the form of diplomacy and tradition-based politics, goodwill, etc. might not be enough for them to regain their standing in the galaxy. I reckon they will still utilize their long lifespans to make some good plannings for peace, however, and I reckon a lot of races will still find them charming and attractive, so they might be able to use that to their advantage. I mean, who are you more likely to make a deal with? This? Or this? Even though Thessia was hit hard, it's likely it didn't have time to be destroyed as hard as Earth, Tuchanka or Palaven for instance, and that could give the Asari a slight rebuilding advantage maybe. Liara is obviously going to play some sort of role in the next game, going by the teasers and trailers, proving that the Asari are one of the confirmed species to return at least, and at least in the form of one individual. And Liara being a hopefully well-respected matriarch, and having worked as a knowledgeable shadow broker, I think the Asari are well positioned to become one of the most powerful races and societies in the next generation. The Asari will likely also benefit from not really having any noteworthy beef with the other races, except for hiding their Prothean relics on Thessia for too long, leading to, let's be honest, a protracted and more bloody war against the Reapers. But besides this, which we will have to see how that pans out, the Salarians, Turians and Krogans, humans and Batarians, for instance, all have some kind of beef, and they will have to reconcile long troubled histories with one another. Hopefully the Reaper War allowed these races to forge some kind of bonds together that will keep them from returning to old, violent ways. So in conclusion, I think the Asari have been dealt good cards to become a dominant and strong force in the next galaxy, but it can be challenging, with the competition being more level after the Reaper War. I will say they have a very interesting and unique potential for Mass Effect 4, combined with their cool lore, history, biology, their important various roles in bringing life and the classic Mass Effect style to the existing games. All this considered, I think I will give the Asari a well-earned Garrus tier. But what do you think though? Was that too generous? Do the Asari belong further down on the list? Are there elements, good or bad, that I overlooked? What do you think of the Asari? And what role do you think they will play in the next Mass Effect? Please do share, as I will presume that we all love talking about Mass Effect. At least if you stuck around for this part of the video. Anyways, this is Dr. Epic signing out. Like if cool, dislike if cringe. And remember, embrace this channel for eternity. Peace out.
I only hope the information in this capsule is enough to help you before it's too late. My name is Dr. Liara Tasuni. Herein lies the recounting of our war with the Reapers.
Hey, hop in, man.
Hey guys, Dr. Epic here. Welcome back to the series where I rank and speculate on the races of Mass Effect. And by races I mean species, alright? We're not talking about other types of races.
We're ranking the best and worst races from around the world. These next two races I can barely tell apart. They're the same. The Henry Ford Health Systems 200 and the Vetnik.
We're currently working on the Citadel races, so let's just get into it. Thank you for clicking. The next race of the Citadel race category is the Drell. These guys are also fairly interesting in my eyes. They serve as a cautionary tale for species on the track to destroying their planet with over-industrialization and predatory climate policies. Since the Drell basically made their own planet uninhabitable and would have died out completely had a sizable chunk of some few hundred thousands of the Drell population not been evacuated and saved by the alien race of Hanar. It's a really poignant and dark point of the Drell history that billions of Drell stayed behind at their dying planet, fighting over their remaining resources and scraps on their dry desert planet. You can just picture the hopeless Drell knowing their extinction is at hand and still killing their fellow kind, simply for the most simple necessities to extend their life just a little bit longer. It's gotta be one of my top 10 nightmare scenarios for a species. Furthermore, the Wikipedia doesn't clarify whether or not the Drell that weren't evacuated by the Hanar chose to stay, or whether they had no choice. If they had no choice, that is really sad and devastating. If some chose to stay even though they had a chance to leave, that is in a way more sad, because that is just so deluded. The Drell relationship with the Hanar is also very cool, with the Drell serving as some kind of honor-bound slave race to the Hanar, according to the so-called Compact. Slave race might be too negative of a connotation, as it seems that most Drell serve them voluntarily, out of goodwill and gratitude, out of some sort of appreciation for the Hanar saving their species from extinction. The Wikipedia makes it clear, though, that some Drell perceive themselves as being treated as second-class citizens by the Hanar on the Hanar homeworld. The Drell military capacity is wholly on behalf of the Hanar, sort of a professional mercenary type of deal. No doubt the Hanar are benefiting well from having people with actual feet as part of their military, instead of just swarms of jellyfish in water. If you think about it, that makes the Hanar Drell military a military force with a unique capacity to engage on both land and aquatic battlefields. The Drell no doubt have a very cool history, and the religion is also kind of interesting, especially the concept of a separation of soul and body. In my mind it comes across as simple coping when Thane is all, "Nah man, I didn't kill those guys, it was my body." My brother in Amonkira, Lord of Hunters, that's the worst apology video I've ever heard. As a lawyer with a degree from Omega, I have to say it has to be a nightmare prosecuting Drell offenders with them on the stand like, "Bro, your honor, my soul didn't know that she was 13. Drell biology is nothing really special. They're flexible, can see more wavelengths than humans, and have a really annoying memory function, allowing them to relive memories, which is fine on paper when you're remembering the first time you judged up your Thenix cannon, if you catch my drift. But it's not as cool when you're chilling at the office in the open landscape and suddenly you're reliving crapping your pants on the way home from school, or, you know, Vietnam or some shit. We have a whole Black Mirror episode showing us why this ability sucks as well. Cool enough concept though, so I'll give the Drell some points for that. As for the Drell's role and contributions to the story and events of the games, they don't really sway the scales like the Krogan, Asari or Turians. Not in any way. They are a minor war asset, and the only Drell of significance we really meet during the Reaper War is Thane, our favorite frog boy, praise be unto him, and he can have an important role in saving the Council, which of course is important in the story itself, even if it kinda feels like a cameo. But not every race can be a huge military player with millions of representatives, so it's not really fair to fault the Drell too much for that, or any of the other races in this racism series. Nevertheless, you can kinda cut them out of Mass Effect 2 and Mass Effect 3 and the story will play out really exactly the same. In Andromeda they're only included in material outside of the game, Apparently the Drell tried to reach the Andromeda aboard a multi-species ark, but 10% of them died due to an onboard plague by a Quarian supremacist. I will never forget that we were robbed of Quarians, Drell, Elcor and Batarians in Andromeda single player, only for this to be banished to a novel. For my concluding remarks, it should be mentioned that nibbling on certain parts of the Drell can make you high. Now you know. But what about the Drell's role in the next Mass Effect game? Now, we don't know which Mass Effect 3 ending will be canon yet as of writing this video script, so I'll cover all of the bases and theorize for 4 potential Mass Effect endings: Control, Synthesis, Destroy, and Refusal. Otherwise known as the Blue, Green, Red, and Sigma ending. Like I said in the Osaria ranking video, the galaxy's power balance has likely largely been reset after the Reaper War, with the Reapers destroying lots of militaries, societies, and worlds. On paper, any race can take over the role as the next dominant species. The Drell, however, they are largely outnumbered, even before the Reaper War, considering only a few hundred thousands were saved by the Hanar, and other species have numbered in the billions for thousands of years. I think the Drell are going to have a very hard time becoming the dominator of the galaxy. I'm sure they are going to rejoice at the possibility of being able to colonize their own planets and perhaps establish their own interstellar society outside of the Compact. A pure Drell society would be interesting to see for the first time, especially to see if they return to their old ways of overpopulation, overconsumption, or if they establish an entirely new type of Drell society. Perhaps a split between Drell purist colonies and the Drell Hanar Compact loyalists existing alongside each other. Now, if the Refusal ending is canon, it's highly likely that most, if not all, of the Drell are eradicated. There's only 2 likely ways for them to have survived, that I can think of at least. Please comment down below if you have another idea. 1. The Drell are frozen in stasis and they manage to do what the Proteans failed to do, and that is to survive into the next cycle after the Reapers are done. I don't see how the Drell, at least without aid from other more advanced races, are supposed to outperform the hyper-advanced Proteans on this. 2. The Drell that went to Andromeda made it. There were very few Drell that went to Andromeda, only a few thousand, making it hard for them to return in full force. At least in the foreseeable future, but who knows what they create after, say, 40,000 years. It's also possible that a combination of this takes place, that some freeze themselves in the Milky Way and some travel to Andromeda, growing stronger there, returning to the Milky Way, either encountering the threat of a Reaper return or meeting a new generation of races that manage to defeat the Reapers, perhaps thanks to Liara's data cache that we see at the end of the Refusal ending cinematic. As far as I see it, without cooperation with other races, it's not super likely that the Drell would be able to defeat the Reapers or any other larger force, like the Ket for instance, after the Refusal ending. I think the Reaper War can be a positive thing for the Drell though, allowing them to rebuild their own thing after the galactic ecosystem was reset, after the massive Reaper War's damages. If the Control ending is canon, you guys know me, if there is to be an interesting story with conflict, the most logical story writer choice within the framework of the Control ending would be for this Shepherd AI controlling the Reapers or something like that, having gone rogue, leading to a dystopian galactic society or another galactic war, or perhaps a return to the classic 50,000 year Reaper cycles. This is also the logical step if there is to be conflict after the Synthesis ending, with synthetics, Reapers included, at war or conflict with us organics again, leaving the organics outnumbered and outgunned once again. In such scenarios, I don't see the Drell contributing much, with them having very low numbers and very weak military capacity, even before the Reaper War and even counting those who went to Andromeda. They would only be good as hit and run assassins and special forces, I would imagine, which most Drell soldiers are trained to be as a part of the Compact. This might however be exactly the kind of soldiers that an anti-Reaper rebellion might need though, so as we know, conventional large-scale warfare against the Reapers is a futile effort. In such a Mass Effect 4 scenario, it would be interesting seeing the Drell perhaps finding their own racial, interstellar and even intergalactic identity, apart from the Hanar-led Compact, for the first time since they had their own home world. It would be cool to see, in my opinion. If the Destroy ending is canon, then we would have the strongest potential for a more classic Mass Effect 4 story. And in this scenario, I think, like I've said before, it would be interesting to see the Drell finding their own place in the galaxy post-Reaper War, perhaps more independent of the Hanar than ever before. I would theorize that some Drell would return to the Compact society, helping the Hanar rebuild their homeworld, since many Drell have genuine gratitude and loyalty to the Hanar who saved their species. Some Drell would likely take the opportunity to try and create their own Drell-only nations. It wouldn't be unlikely for there to be some tension between these factions, especially in the use of resources. I don't find it super likely that there would be any serious ill will between these Drell factions though, unless something violent and immoral happens. In Andromeda, I imagine some Drell would be interested in finding their own golden world, or joining an existing one that suits them. The excess water on Kaje is a source of many Drell health problems, so they'll probably be interested in finding a drier planet. And I'm instantly thinking that Eos could be a logical candidate for Drell settlement, or perhaps Kadara if they're fit to fight the outlaws and exiles that live there. The Drell are amphibious after all, so some water amount is likely to be desired by the Drell. If some of these very few Drell want to return to the Milky Way, I see them not impacting the story too much, but they can perhaps aid their Milky Way cousins. The Drell haven't really struck me as the warmongering kind. Though they fought each other harshly on their home planet, it seems that those who wanted to fight stayed and died by their swords. The Compact era Drell seem much more peaceful. Who knows what will happen if the Drell nations outside of the Compact spring up, because we will see the warmongering Drell in full force for the first time perhaps. I wouldn't count them as too much of a threat individually speaking, but in a bigger alliance, perhaps with Grogan or Batarians, the Drell could actually be not just a military nuisance, but a serious military threat. I don't think that's super likely, but hey, let's just wait and see. So in conclusion, Drell lore and potential for the next game is very interesting and full of potential. I really like their background history. Personally, they lack a certain X factor, perhaps because they are in a lot of aspects just a humanoid bipedal amphibious alien, not as unique as say the Keepers or Elfcore, or even the Hanar. And the Drell don't really have a noteworthy impact on the course of the story in the games. The Drell biology is, to me, personally not super interesting, though the memory abilities are kind of interesting and cool, though it's kind of annoying when Thane is disappearing into his PTSD moments every other second. So in summation, I would have to place the Drell in the Liara tier. Thane stands, remember, I'm ranking the Drell as a whole, not ranking Thane specifically. That will have to be another video, another dedicated video. Do you still disagree? Should the Drell be higher or lower on the list, or do you think I nailed the placement of them there? What do you feel about the Drell? What do you think that they will do in Mass Effect 4, if they are to do anything? Do you think they will just be relegated to another novel, like in Andromeda? Other than that, I don't have anything else to say on the Drell right now. This is Dr. Epic signing out. Like if cool, dislike if cringe, and remember to give that sub button capital syndrome. Hey guys, Dr. Epic here. Welcome back to the Racism series. This is a series where we rank the races of Mass Effect. The next race for evaluation is the notorious Elcor. S tier. Done. Next. I love the Elcor. They are so fantastically unique and really something quite different from the standard humanoid species you usually see in primitive 1970s sci-fi movies. You know what I'm talking about. I really appreciate BioWare making a unique species like this that don't even really walk upright. And their speech pattern, though the bane of a non-conversation skipping speedrunner's existence, is also unique and entertaining. Apparently, the Elcor speak their most speech through smell, so I imagine heated Elcor debates can get really smelly. Elcor culture is really cool, with them always prefixing their monotone speech with what emotion they're trying to convey when they're talking to us plebeians who can't appreciate their deep smells. And I find it really cool how their culture of slow and deliberate nature is tied to their homeworld, where the heavy gravity can make the slightest misstep lethal. Apparently this has also made the Elcor generally very conservative, which is a cool lore-based connection. Other cool lore includes their migratory nature, like they're acting like elephant herds, materializing in twin planetary capitals, one for the wet and one for the dry season on the planet of Dakuna, as well as their scattered, non-centralized planetary settlements, actually working to their advantage when the Reapers arrived, making the harvest slower than usual because they have to walk these long distances. So yeah, another win for the elephant guys. It's also kind of funny how the Elcor are apparently super cultured and artsy, even though to us they appear as really unexpressive and emotionless cows, essentially. There's two things that I want from the Elcor before Mass Effect retires. 1. I want to have an Elcor squad mate. 2, basically the same, but I want to see an Elcor soldier, which are described as walking tanks, running around with a cane or a Spitfire on their back or something. Perhaps this is something we'll see in Mass Effect 4, hopefully alongside a full frontal XXX Elcor romance option. Alright, I googled this. Do not Google this. Okay, don't Google this. I tried to find a funny meme to use here, but don't Google this. After the Reaper War, the power balance and slate is kinda wiped clean, since the Reapers destroyed so many militaries, societies and planets. If the Elcor were to take over the galaxy, now would be the time. But Elcor nature, being defensive, introverted, conservative and overtly careful, might limit their drive to do such a thing. Most likely, I think the Elcor will simply tend to care for their existing worlds, to repopulate them, repair them and return to their largely isolated galactic existence. What role any Andromeda Elcor will play is hard to say. I imagine the Andromeda Elcor wanting to find a high gravity world there and live happily ever after, perhaps migrate to and from the Milky Way, if some sort of intergalactic mass relay could be constructed. Now, Mass Effect 3 can end in roughly 4 ways: the Chad refusal ending, blue control ending, green synthesis ending, and the red destroy ending. I see the Elcor struggling to have a noteworthy presence and impact in the story in basically any of the scenarios from any of the endings. The Elcor are few in number, they're slow and they don't have a very impressive military capacity. In the refusal ending, the Reapers are still present in dark space, or maybe they're extinct, and some next generation of Milky Way races dominate the galaxy. In such a scenario, the Elcor will either have to have learned how to freeze themselves down in a stasis mode, which I can't really imagine since the Protheans struggle with this, and the Elcor aren't particularly known for their ingenuity, intelligence, or advanced technology. They would have, in this case, to be supported by other species, like the Salarians or Rosaria for instance. Still, it's possible, but I find it unlikely. More likely is the Elcor that traveled to Andromeda returning, perhaps having grown in power level, and assisting the Elcor of the Milky Way or replacing them as the Elcor in the Milky Way are extinct. Elcor nature is, like I said, very peaceful and seemingly not that interested in warfare. Of course, this could have changed after the Reaper War, with the Elcor perhaps coming to the realization that greater military prowess is required to keep themselves safe, as we know a lot of Elcor died in the Reaper War and only not enough Elcor were saved by Shepard's efforts. It's hard to see the military value of the Elcor in a rebellion against the Reaper overlords, for instance. They are slow, conspicuous and not huge risk takers apparently. There are of course known outliers, like the Bouncers or the Merchants on Omega, and of course Garrus has apparently told us about some kind of Elcor serial killer on the Citadel at one point. So alright, granted, I would not want to go hand-to-hand combat with any Elcor, but I'd imagine a Drell sniper being scarier than an Elcor sniper, for instance. So in guerrilla warfare and infiltration, it's hard to picture the Elcor being very valuable. Their only real military value is that they can carry a lot of firepower. But that firepower in turn has to be fairly tailor-made, I imagine, for Elcor use, since they don't seem to operate guns the same way most other races do. I can imagine them probably serving as some kind of decent infantry fighting vehicle, if you're low on those. As for the control and synthesis ending scenarios, like I've said in previous videos, I think the natural scenario for a story will be with rogue or evil Reaper-backed enemies. Fighting will perhaps be similar to what I just described for the refusal scenario, in that we are leading a rebellion against the enemy. Again, Elcor military value is limited, but perhaps they can offer some good planning abilities, given that they have developed a very thorough thought process due to their careful nature and their long age, which is several centuries, which would allow them to consider every possible outcome in a good way before deciding on the best next step. So maybe they could be good strategists or something. The Elcor would probably play a small role in any rebellion though, besides that, just as they did during the Reaper War and the OG games. If the destroy ending scenario is to be canon, that would perhaps be a more interesting stage for the Elcor to play on. The destroy ending is in a way reverting the Milky Way to a more classic Mass Effect setting in the way I see it, with various races set to interact or fight to get control and resources, just like the real world. It would be interesting to see the Elcor forging their new identity or rebuilding their old societies. Perhaps more unconventional and untraditional Elcor would assume control over Elcor societies, as we know that there are violent, criminal and evil Elcor. With Elcor being able to live centuries, it's logical to believe that they have a better than human skills in long-term planning, perhaps giving them an advantage in galactic power game, if they were to become more power hungry, that is. The Alcor aren't that numerous though, on the other hand, with their homeworld numbering just 2.35 billion living Alcor, compared to the much younger, in interstellar terms, human population, having a homeworld housing 11.4 billion humans pre-Reaper invasion. So to summarize all these thoughts, in the Destroy scenario, the Alcor seem to have the most potential to evolve and change out of the different Mass Effect 3 endings. But I don't think these traditionally conservative and careful creatures will seek to change their societies too much. I imagine them spending their resources simply to repair pre-existing colonies and their populations. In galactic politics, I imagine them assuming a neutrality policy or something like that. Perhaps they want to expand their military capabilities in light of the Reaper Wars aftermath, saddened by the immense loss of life, but more than that, I can't really imagine them trying to become some sort of military powerhouse. As for the Alcor that travel to the Andromeda Galaxy, like I said, I imagine them looking for a high gravity world suitable for their needs and just staying there, but I can't remember any that would fit that description in the Helix cluster out of the planets, off the top of my head. Let me know what planet you think the Alcor would prefer. Perhaps Meridian, as I imagine that planet, quote unquote, having some kind of variable gravity control, which would be nice for the Alcor. But to conclude, I don't think the Alcor will be really important in the next game either, but damn it, I want to see them again so bad, and I'm really interested in seeing how they respond to the destruction of the Reaper War, and if that will affect their deeply traditional and conservative societies or not. So I really love the Alcor, and I want to see them again. They're really unique and original, and really help make Mass Effect feel like a universe packed with interesting aliens. Mass Effect needs more of these types of creatures. On the other hand though, they don't play any role of importance to the plot and story. They're only minor war assets in Mass Effect 3, and they weren't even in the Mass Effect Andromeda game, being relegated to a novel, which is a big shame. So to conclude, I will place the Alcor comfortably in the Rex tier.
Wow!
What do you think about that though? Too high? Too low? Am I being too harsh? Too generous? Is there something about the Alcor I did mention that I should have mentioned? Do you love them? Do you hate them? And what do you think the Alcor will be up to in the next game? Let me know. And for now, this is Dr. Epic signing out. Like if cool, dislike if cringe. And remember, stomp that subscribe button with your elephant feet. Hey guys, Dr. Epic here. Welcome back to this racially charged series. This is a series where we rank each Citadel race in Mass Effect, and then we speculate on their potential roles for the next Mass Effect game. This time we're evaluating the big, based jellyfish known as Hanar. Much like the Alcor that we looked at last, I have to give the Hanar a lot of points for originality and uniqueness. Their biology is very different and unique compared to the other species, with the Hanar being an aquatic species with natural toxins, no gender, tentacles, speaking through bioluminescence and this ethereal voice. Aside from the Leviathans, I believe the Hanar are the only other intelligent aquatic creature that we know of in the Mass Effect universe. Their culture is also in general pretty cool and unique, regarding for example their use of soul and face names, as well as them being very polite and taking offense at small errors in language apparently. And who can forget their religious zeal when it comes to all things Prothean, like blocking Prothean dig sites or just preaching on the Citadel. The relationship with the Drell, like we touched on earlier in this series, is also very unique for a sci-fi setting, in my opinion. Like the Alcor, the Hanar don't really impact the story of the games in any noteworthy way, save for some war assets in Mass Effect 3, but let's be real guys, literally everything is a war asset in Mass Effect 3. Even the friggin' resources from planet probing in Mass Effect 2 is a war asset, okay? But, you know, speaking of war, the Hanar have a small military capacity, donning a relatively small navy, as well as limited land warfare capability, obviously. They seem to primarily rely on Drell assistance when they're going on land and want to fight, and then primarily they just use them as spies and assassins and that kind of stuff. The relationship between the Hanar and the Drell is very fascinating. The Hanar are likely the ones we have to thank for the Drell race surviving at all. As we all know, they had this kind of ecological collapse this day after tomorrow Battlefield 2042 chaos stuff going on their homeworld. So they were basically going extinct, but the Hanar came and gave them a rat out of there or something. This act of grace is what laid the foundations for the so-called Compact, which is a sort of debt of gratitude or a treaty of cooperation between the Drell and the Hanar, where they, offer services to each other. Even though the Hanar military might be weak, I want to see more truly alien aliens like the Hanar. And Mass Effect would not be Mass Effect without the Hanar, so I'm very comfortable in giving them a lot of points that help their ranking, just from this cool lore. But what about the potential for Mass Effect 4? What role could the Hanar possibly fill? What will these guys get up to? This kinda depends on which ending is canon. Mass Effect 3 has roughly 4 different endings to choose from, where one likely will be made canon, or all 4 if my wettest Hanar-filled dreams will come true. These are the Refusal ending, Control, Synthesis, and Destroy ending. In the Refusal ending, the Reapers are either still alive in dark space or eradicated, I imagine, and possibly there's a brand new cycle and generation of Milky Way races dominating the galaxy as well. In order to have survived into this time period, the Hanar will have to have learned either how to freeze themselves into stasis for a long time period, which would have to be a very long time period, way longer than the journey of the Arcs to Andromeda, I would imagine, considering each Reaper cycle is usually 50,000 years. The Protheans tried, they struggled and failed at this several times, most notably at Eden Prime and Ilos. That leaves me to find it very unlikely that these big brain Hanar alone, or even with the help from other intelligent and sophisticated species of our time like the Solarians or Asari, can manage such a feat. Then on the other side, we do know that the Hanar are very worshipping of the Protheans and have probably a lot of relics of theirs at their homeworld. They probably collect a lot of Prothean artifacts in general. Maybe that could give them a technological edge here, something we've never seen or heard about before, who knows? And so their Prothean fixation could theoretically result in them finding a breakthrough in stasis technology, which would allow them to survive the Refusal ending and be present. But a more likely way for the Hanar to return to the Milky Way in the Refusal scenario is that the Hanar that traveled to Andromeda have returned, perhaps having grown in numbers and power. Hanar nature, much like the Elcor nature, is very peaceful and seemingly not that interested in warfare or conflict. This philosophy could have changed after the Reaper War, with the Hanar perhaps coming to some sort of collective realization that greater military power than what they had is needed to keep themselves and their Drell companions safe. I do find it difficult to believe that the Hanar will grow into a super dominating economic, political, or military powerhouse, given their already small power level in the OG games. Probably that's even worse after the Reaper War. So, as well, only a very small Hanar population was sent to Andromeda, and depending on the actions of Shepard in Mass Effect 3, the Hanar homeworld will either be completely overrun by the Reaper forces, or it could be saved, seemingly in its entirety. It would be cool to see the effects of this choice reflected in the fate of the Hanar in the next game, and I really hope this is one of the choices that have a consequence in the next game. In a scenario where we are rebelling against Reaper overlords, for example, I find it hard to believe that the Hanar themselves will be of much value. Perhaps for underwater fights or something like that, they could prove useful, as I believe Thane described them as very majestic, fast, and impressive creatures when they're in their natural habitat. When they're not fish out of water, so to speak. If we were to fight, say, the Leviathans, I reckon that the Hanar technology and manpower could be very useful. Other than that, their use is limited to their skill in political subterfuge, espionage, and use of trained Drell personnel by the power of the Compact. That kind of soft power, behind the scenes stuff. So if there is to be any conflict after choosing the Control or Synthesis ending, then I imagine it would play out fairly similar to how it would play out in the Refusal universe. I'm then referring to the story being a kind of rebellion against the Reapers themselves, either because of the evil Shepard Control AI, or some other reason, or some faction that's perhaps aligned with all or some of the Reapers that survived. I imagine the Hanar then could play a role that's similar to what I described in the refusal ending, where they help you with the underwater stuff, kind of behind the scenes, not a huge military power. I believe that BioWare will probably most likely choose the Destroy ending as the canon ending on which to build the next Mass Effect. I know. Everybody wants their favorite ending to be chosen, but I preferably want every single ending to be canon. But I know that's probably physically impossible for them to achieve, so... but it's not about what I want. I think the most likely choice for them is the Destroy ending as the canon ending. And I have made a video on this, so you could check that out if you want to. In such a universe, with the Destroy ending as canon, then the writers will have a lot of freedom as to where to take the story, whereas the other three endings put a lot of restraint on the setting, basically. After the Reaper War, the power balance will have been shifted dramatically, so theoretically any race can take the mantle of power as the next big cheese. I do, sadly, no matter how much we want to welcome our new tentacle overlords, have little faith in the vastly outnumbered Hanar being able to outcompete the Krogan, Turians, Asari, or even Quarians, for instance. However, the Hanar might be able to broker some kind of deal with the Leviathans from a kind of aquatic brotherhood, though I personally would assume that the Leviathans are more likely to just retreat back into uncharted space in the next game, so they, can avoid being bothered anymore than they already have. That is, if they don't suddenly revive their imperialistic ambitions again and want to enslave everybody, which would make them one of the most likely villains of Mass Effect 4, but I guess that's another kind of video. In a scenario where the Leviathans are more central to the plot than they were in the previous games, I would reckon that the Hanar and the Leviathans would actually be very competitive against each other and maybe even hostile, as I'm sure that a good habitable water world is a resource that they would all like to have exclusively for themselves. But who knows? And if the Drell were to try and establish their own nations independent of the Compact and the Hanar, then the Hanar military power would decrease even more, making them an even weaker player on the galactic stage. Again, if Hanar from Andromeda were to return with reinforcements, this could mitigate existing weaknesses of the Milky Way galaxy. So to summarize, I think the Hanar likely won't be a big player this time either. I think they will most likely return to the role they had before as a small economic power with a few merchants here and there, but nothing that really impacts the story that much. But there are a lot of variables to consider, like what will the Drell do? Did Shepard save the Hanar homeworld or not? What impact will the Andromeda Hanar have for the Milky Way, etc. I seriously want a Hanar squad mate, and I'm sure some of you out there want a Hanar romance option, and to each their own, of course. Just don't do that shit in public. I also really want some sort of underwater mission where the Hanar can show their true skills. Visiting Kajay would be amazing, seeing the Compact working in the flesh, the domed cities and the great ocean of the encompassing. That's really good nerd stuff right there. Hanar lore is really cool and fascinating on all levels. I find them to be truly alien and really unique. The Hanar are an easy Garrus tier. Easy for me. Even though they don't have that much impact on the story, they just have that really good X factor to me. And that's kind of decisive in these evaluations. The only thing these guys need is more screen time.
Go home, I'm rewriting all of your parts. Except for you, Jeffrey. You have locked into something here. And the only thing your character needs is more screen time.
Do you disagree? Should they be lower on the list? What do you think the Hanar's role in Mass Effect 4 will be, if not something like what I've described here? Is there something I missed? Something like that. This is Dr. Epic, signing out. Remember, like if cool, dislike if cringe, and enkindle that subscribe button, alright? See you later. Hey guys, Dr. Epic here. Welcome back to Racism HQ. This is a channel where we evaluate each Citadel race in Mass Effect to find out which of these are the coolest races, as well as speculating on what each race will get up to in the next Mass Effect game. Let's not dilly-dally. Thank you for clicking, let's get to it. Next up in the Racism series are the humans. I hate these guys, man. Like, who do they think they are? Coming out of nowhere, provoking the shit out of those poor Turians, upsetting the balance of power just to serve their own gains, single-handedly causing the Batarians to remove their Citadel embassy, and regressing to a Stalinist society behind the galactic Iron Curtain. And what do these humans contribute to the galaxy? The elusive man, who has to be the direct descendant of a certain Austrian painter with how space racist and genocidal he is. To be fair, making sci-fi humans is a challenge, because you want them to be relatable, but you also kind of want them to be sci-fi enough so that your mind isn't too stuck in modern politics, history, and real life, stuff like that. At least in my opinion, that's what I kind of look for human races in sci-fi. At least for a game like Mass Effect, where the appeal is kind of giving you a different, better world than the one we're in. I think BioWare actually did a good job on the humans. They're naturally a bit boring, of course, compared to all the other more exotic alien races, because they're, you know, literally aliens. But human lore is still kind of cool in Mass Effect. I'm then referring mostly to the First Contact War, Batarian conflicts, the human ascendancy into the Council and Spectres, as well as the notorious human organization Cerberus, and of course the Alliance's and Shepard's role in preserving or sacrificing the Council of Old. Humanity plays a huge part in Mass Effect. For example, all protagonists, i.e. Shepard and the Riders, are human. The Elusive Man and Cerberus are kind of human supremacists, along with a lot of important characters like Anderson and Udina, also famous humans. The Collectors and the Reapers, they're really interested in creating this human Reaper. The final battle of the OG trilogy takes place on the human homeworld, Earth, as it's known.
Planet Earth.
This is all well and dandy, but what about humanity's place in the next Mass Effect? This kind of depends, obviously, on which ending is the canon choice for the next story. Mass Effect 3, as we all know, has roughly 4 different endings: the Refusal ending, Control, Synthesis, and Destroy ending, otherwise sometimes referred to as the Troll ending, Blue, Green, and Red endings. In the Refusal ending, the Reapers are either most likely still alive in dark space or dead altogether, and possibly with a brand new cycle and generation of Milky Way races that's dominating the galaxy. In order to have survived so far into the future, the humans will have to learn how to freeze themselves into stasis for a long time period, longer most likely than the time it took for them to get to Andromeda with the Arcs. And the Protheans struggled and failed to freeze themselves into the future several times, like on Eden Prime and Ilos. And this leaves me to find it unlikely that the humans alone, or even with the help from other intelligent and sophisticated species like Salarians or Asari, could manage such a feat. Human technology is fairly advanced, however, especially if you look at Cerberus technology, which is based on a lot of research and reverse engineering of Reaper and Collector technology. Judging from one of the teaser trailers for the next game, it seems that perhaps Cerberus or Cerberus technology or some completely different faction that seems to be human, if you ask me, given Liara's talk about human defiance. And it seems like these guys, most like humans, are constructing a mass relay looking thing. This hints towards human technology having grown even more advanced in the future. This is of course a large chunk of speculation, however, as we don't really even know if the construct from the trailer is supposed to be a mass relay at all, or who built it. But I believe it is a largely human design. With humanity possessing such advanced technology, that could mean that some humans managed to freeze themselves successfully into the future, something the Protheans never managed on a large scale. If this really is a mass relay, it brings into the equation that it's likely we will see a meetup of Andromeda and Milky Way humans. They would perhaps combine forces, possibly alongside other alien races, to fight the next big bad, be that Cat, evil Reapers, or evil new races. If the time skip is really large, like 40,000 years, then I don't think a mass relay is even necessary for the Andromedan reinforcements to reach the Milky Way. They could just, fly there. I think regardless of the endings of Mass Effect 3, and just going off the trailers and teasers, that the Milky Way and Andromeda Galaxy and their stories will be joined in some kind of way for the next game. If there is to be any conflict after choosing the Control or Synthesis ending, I imagine it would play out fairly similar to how it would play out in the Refusal universe. I'm then referring to the story possibly being a kind of rebellion type story against the Reapers themselves, either because the Shepard Control AI has gone evil or some other reason, or perhaps there's just some other faction that's aligned with all or some of the Reapers that remain. I would then imagine the humans playing a similar role in those endings as for in the Control and Synthesis ending, like they did in the Refusal ending universe. Perhaps the human protagonist will manage to talk down the Shepard Control ending AI, forcing the AI to remember the human experience or something, and how Shepard wouldn't have wanted all this menace and destruction or something like that. The Destroy ending universe would in my eyes largely be a return to a classic Mass Effect setting, with all the different races vying for control and influence. In such a scenario, humanity, despite being absolutely shreked by the Reapers in the Reaper War, seemed to actually have been dealt a fairly good hand compared to the other races. Let me explain. Humanity has traditionally possessed a very capable and strong navy and military capacity. They're in general very skilled at war.
Humans are no strangers to war. After all, we've been fighting for as long as we can remember. War is all we know.
The humans as well have very decent technology, especially if you're counting in Cerberus feats, though I think human technology in general is not as advanced as Asari or Stellarian technology, for instance. The humans, according to the Wikipedia, number in a notable size. As far as we know, humanity still possesses all of these traits of being a notable size and having good tech and good military power, though it's likely diminished considerably, but that's the same for every other race essentially, so it kinda cancels out. All of this makes the humans have good potential for seizing more power on the galactic scene, as they were already expanding rapidly before the Reaper War. With the balance of power being shifted so dramatically, even though Earth and a lot of Alliance colonies are devastated beyond belief, I reckon the humans will expand rapidly again, finding their footing, potentially even becoming the next dominant force in the galaxy, or as strong or stronger as the Turians used to be. In summation, I did find the humans interesting enough, but they're not super interesting either, like the other exciting, exotic, literally alien species. The human lore is good, and they have a good impact on the story. It's across the board, it's just good. Humanity never had much of an X factor to me though, but they do have a lot of potential for Mass Effect 4, which gives them some points. So in conclusion, if I bring all my feelings and thoughts together, I'd have to give the humans a comfortable Miranda tier. But that's just my take. I don't know what you guys think. Should they be higher or lower on the list perhaps? What do you think the next step for humanity in Mass Effect 4 is? If you want to let me know, let me know. If not, this is just Dr. Epic signing out. Seeing you guys in the next video perhaps. Like the video if it's cool, dislike it if it's cringe. And remember, humanize that sub button. Alright? Bye bye. Hey guys, Dr. Epic here. Welcome back to the Race Debate, which is a series where we tackle the Milky Way question: which Citadel race is the coolest? And what role will that race play in the next game? We have already looked at a few of the Citadel races, but we won't stop until we're through. Thank you for clicking. Next up are the legendary Keepers. Keepers are incredibly unique and truly alien, and probably one of the most intriguing and mysterious races in the entire Mass Effect games. Actually on par with the Reapers themselves in terms of mystery, if you ask me. This is a highly commendable feat. Unlike other Citadel races we have looked at, like the Hanar and the Elcor, the Keepers are also actually pivotal to the plot of the story. I mean, the Keepers are literally the reason as to how Reapers managed to eradicate untold civilizations like the Proteans. They are the reason why we had a fighting chance at all against the Reapers, as a result of the Protean signal meddling 50,000 years ago. I really do appreciate how BioWare gives a final callback to the Keepers at the end of Mass Effect 3 with showing that they have some sort of role in cleaning up and processing Reaper harvested organics. And I would literally kill. You hear me? I would murder something or someone to have a Keeper squad mate, or a pet, or something. Romance option. I don't know. I don't care. In Mass Effect 4. I want to interact with these guys. Okay? Since the Keepers are actually plot important, I will have to give these very unique aliens a lot of points. Very considerable amount of points. What pulls the Keepers down is the fact that they're not really important to the plot outside of their abstract Reaper roles. And they don't really appear in the story outside of this plot point, so you don't really interact with them at all. The only exception being the side quest in Mass Effect 1, really. But what about Mass Effect 4? What role could the Keepers possibly fill? What will these guys get up to, huh? This kinda depends on which ending is canon. Mass Effect 3 has roughly 4 different endings to choose from: Refusal, Synthesis, Control, and Destroy. In the Refusal ending, the Reapers are most likely either still alive in dark space or they're eradicated, and possibly the brand new cycle and generation of Milky Way races that's dominating the galaxy. The Keepers have always struck me as kind of like mindless drones, like Husks or the Collectors in Mass Effect 2. With the Reapers eradicated, the Keepers would be without purpose, except for to maintain the Citadel, which has been their purpose in most of the games. Refusal ending or not, the Keepers definitely have a proper job ahead of them in fixing up that place after the Reaper War. The difference between the Collectors, Husks, and Keepers when it comes to their loyalty to the Reaper plans is, in my opinion, actually worthy of recognition. Because we learn in Mass Effect 3 that the Leviathan was able to break some surviving Collectors free of the Reaper's influence. It seems therefore that the Collectors, though heavily biologically and bionically augmented, just are a bunch of organic beings that are indoctrinated on mostly a mental level. So if you break the indoctrination, the Collectors can be saved and returned to being high-functioning, conscious and intelligent creatures, more akin to the proteins that they were made from. The Husks, on the other hand, like brutes, banshees or cannibals, seem completely devoid of mental faculties and they appear hopeless to rehabilitate, more like cyborg robots. The Keepers, though, they seem to fall in the same category as the other mindless Husks, but I can't say that for certain, because they're no doubt very intelligent, as they manage to maintain this super advanced space station, which is also a humongous mass relay, which hints towards still highly functioning mental faculties of the Keepers. In turn, this might suggest that their indoctrination and programming can be broken, perhaps by Leviathan. We do know that the Proteans managed to disrupt their programming in a way, so perhaps the unbelievably more intelligent and skilled Leviathans could free the Keepers properly, just like they did the Collectors, and turn them into, people you can talk to and romance. And if the Keepers cannot be freed, they most likely will have little to no purpose in Mass Effect universe with the Reapers being gone, unless someone wants to use the Citadel for something. Perhaps creating a mass relay route to Andromeda or something. I'm just trying to help the writers here right now. But if the Reapers are still around as usual with their traditional 50,000 year cycles or something, for example if we're talking a Refusal ending universe, then the Keepers likely would have actually been extinct and completely removed from existence. This is because the Reapers, well at least Sovereign, sought to replace the Keepers with a more controllable race, preferably purely synthetic beings, to avoid the same problem they experienced with the Protean signal meddling. Though I find it hard to believe how it's any harder to mess up a synthetic unit's signal compared to an organic being, but that's perhaps besides the point. So I'm sad to say, but the Refusal ending will likely just lead to the Keeper's utter destruction, further proving why this ending is an unjustifiable war crime and a blasphemous choice. But as for the Control ending, who knows? This is kind of up to the Shepard AI. If the Shepard AI agrees with Sovereign, Keepers will most likely perish. But I don't really see that problem being a problem for the Shepard AI, since the Shepard AI presumably doesn't seek to continue the cycles, and the reason why Sovereign wanted to replace the Keepers were exactly because of their risk to the cycles. I think the Keepers likely would be allowed to live, since they seemingly seem to maintain the Citadel just fine, Or perhaps the Shepherd AI would free them from the indoctrination, if that's possible to do, and let them pursue their happiness like everyone else. Perhaps the Keepers of the Citadel will be replaced with some kind of advanced VI powered operators instead. As for the synthesis ending, if it's possible, the Keepers would likely become free thinkers unshackled by Reaper programming. And who knows what free-thinking autonomous Keepers could contribute to the galaxy. Their comparatively very small numbers and frail physiques would probably keep them from becoming a major power in the galaxy, though their knack for engineering and possibly really high intelligence could give them some sort of special role in the galaxy, somewhat akin to the Solarians. And they would probably still enjoy the power and respect stemming from their expertise in maintaining the Citadel, which can be presumed to still be the galactic capital. As for the destroy ending, if the Keepers can't be freed mentally, they will likely just return to maintaining the Citadel, and I reckon the Council or whoever is in power at this point will continue to leave them alone to do their calling in life. But if the Keepers can be freed mentally, like I said, their intelligence and Citadel experience could give them some power in the galaxy, but their small numbers and weak bodies would limit what they can utilize to gain power in the galaxy. Perhaps they could be instrumental in repairing the mass relays, since they have experience with Reaper technology by maintaining the Citadel, which, like I said, is basically just a big mass relay. I reckon it would be wise to have these Reaper technology experts on your side, which could make them a valuable keystone for any power-hungry maniac seeking to dominate the galaxy. So, all in all, Keeper lore is really cool. And they are actually really impactful to the story, even though we rarely, if ever, interact with them directly. So, in my eyes, they have earned a comfortable Garrus tier. But like, Garrus tier minus, due to their somewhat limited direct impact in the events of the story. Their potential for Mass Effect 4 is highly limited, but I'm actually really excited to see what the writers will do with the Keepers, since the Reapers are likely completely gone, or having reorganized their plans for the Keepers and the Citadel at least. So I think the Keepers have a somewhat interesting potential for Mass Effect 4, and I really appreciate how truly alien and unique and mysterious the Keepers are. What do you guys think though? Did I miss something? Did I waste something completely terrible? What do you think will become of the Keepers in the next game? Let me know in the comments below, or by fax or something like that on the extranet, I don't know. Either way, this is Dr. Epic signing out. Like if cool, dislike if cringe. And keep subbing. Alright? See what I did there? See what I did there? Alright. Bye bye. Hey guys, Dr. Epic here. We're still doing the race baiting series known as ranking and speculating on Mass Effect Citadel races. We have looked at several different Citadel races already, and we are now moving on to the Solarians, everybody's favorite lizard people who used to eat flies. Now, these guys deserve a lot of respect or a lot of hate, depending on your morals and ethics, I guess. They are probably the race with the most blame in why the Galactic Society pre-Reaper War was in the state that it was, due to their responsibility for uplifting the Krogan and then subsequently essentially sterilizing them. Their technological feats are very impressive nonetheless, resulting in a small but advanced military. Their intelligence and brilliance in fast and creative thinking are woven into their biology, just like their high metabolism and fast talking. Apparently, Solarians aren't interested in reproduction just for the fun of it, but they view it in a sort of clinical, necessary and dynasty-preserving fashion, which explains why you never hear of any Solarian YouTubers being cancelled, I guess. Their ability to think non-linearly, unconventionally, and to process large amounts of information quickly explains why their intelligence agencies are so effective and valued by the Council and their allies. Solarian military doctrine isn't very conventional either. They like to strike first and without warning. A clear example of these shady and often illegal tactics being used in an organized manner is the Special Tasks Group, which set the model for the first establishment of the Spectres, which is cool. And Solarian lore is fairly cool, and there is no denying their central role in the galaxy and the story you play through. They have some cool characters like Kirihi and Morden, and I really enjoyed visiting Surkesh and seeing Salarian shadiness up close in Mass Effect 3. A game in which the Salarians' influence was pivotal to unite the galaxy and to fight the Reapers. Were it not for the Salarians, the Genophage wouldn't have been invented or cured, for that matter. On the downside, on the moist, critical side, if you will, they are essentially just a bipedal humanoid race which draw a lot of their design inspiration from the already established alien form and shape of the so-called classic alien or grey alien or Paul. This makes them not super unique in their design, though uniqueness comes from their amphibious dimension and all the other elements that we just gone through. I have to be unbiased, people, okay? I need to bring these things up, even the bad sides of the Salarians. That's why you trust me to tackle these hard questions that everybody is asking, but are too afraid to think. On the topic of hard questions, what role are the Salarians likely to fill in the next Mass Effect? As we know, it's highly likely given teasers and trailers so far that the setting will be in the Milky Way galaxy again. What is unclear as of writing this video, however, is whether or not the destroy, control, synthesis or refusal ending will be the canon choice. If not all of them, of course, for the next game. In the refusal ending, the Reapers will either still be alive or extinct by the actions of an unknown alien race in a new Reaper cycle, where these new aliens are operating using data and technology left behind by extinct Milky Way species like we did with the Proteans. It looks like this is what Liara is trying to facilitate. Or perhaps there's a entirely new generation of an unseen alien. If the Salarians are to survive into this next cycle, they could have frozen themselves in stasis, like the Proteans tried to and failed to do. The Proteans are seriously more advanced than even the brilliant Salarians, but if there is one Citadel race in the Milky Way that could pull it off, the Salarians would be the best bet. Especially with working together with other technologically advanced races, like the Asari for instance. I think it's possible for the Salarians to go into stasis and, survive the refusal ending doing that. It's difficult, but it's possible. It wouldn't break my suspension of disbelief. Just use some kind of evolved version of the Ark hibernation pods or something like that. Alternatively, of course, we know that a bunch of Salarians travel to the Andromeda galaxy, and if everything went fine enough with the Ket and Scourge and all the other Andromeda problems, these Salarian reinforcements could be heading back to the Milky Way. Of course, this is only relevant for the story if we're talking long-ass timescopes and timeskips in Mass Effect 4. The Salarians never really did have a big military force, but they had an effective one, and unrivaled intelligence branches like the STG. Knowledge is power, and this is something the Salarians really knew, and if they were to put those skills to good use in a rebellion type story or something like that against the Reaper or other kind of oppressors, Salarian intelligence skills could be a very nice asset to have. Their fast minds could be very useful in assessing new scenarios and coming up with the most prudent tactical decisions in a completely new environment. I would definitely want to have Salarian inventors and spies on my side in any scenario, even if, say, the Turians traditionally have a stronger military in size and firepower. Speaking of, the Reaper War is in many ways a reset, like I've said before in this series, and who knows, perhaps the Salarians can outbreed the Turians and other stronger species and maybe get their own firepower and manpower dominance, becoming the next dominant player. I think the Salarians, though perhaps outnumbered militarily today, could grow huge pretty fast since they do lay a lot of eggs. Speaking of Salarian eggs, I recently learned of a subspecies of Salarian, for lack of better words. Basically a group of Salarians believing heavily in genetic and otherwise biological modification of themselves, who also believe in fertilizing more eggs than the standard traditional Salarians do. And this group is called the Lysenthi. The Wikipedia is citing Mass Effect Ascension, which is a Drew Karpyshyn 2008 novel, where they describe them as an offshoot of the Salarians, unwelcome in council space. They may be found living among Batarians, exiled Quarians, and other galactic refuse at the Omega Station. Nothing more is known about them. End quote. I cannot for the life of me and all my playthroughs remember seeing or hearing of these in-game before I investigated them now recently on the Mass Effect Wikipedia. But it's believable. Sounds kind of cool. I kind of want to see them. I know not everybody will agree with me on that. And lore-wise, I just reckon they're hiding somewhere, biding their return, possibly. It was apparently a dropped story point to partake in a sort of war involving the Hanar because of these tougher Solarian guys. I would find it fairly interesting to see something like this, or maybe even a Solarian civil war unfold. I think it could be kind of cool. So if they end up doing something with that in Mass Effect 4, I think that has potential to be kind of cool, you guys. Could be very interesting to see how these other kinds of Solarians would potentially exploit the damage that the Citadel space and traditional Solarian race has suffered at Reaper hands. Perhaps we're looking at a new galactic Solarian order. I mean, like, who knows? Alright, let's give it a chance if they want to do that. If the control or synthesis ending is canon, and the conflict is basically us finding an evil Shepherd AI or evil synthesis Reapers or races, then Solarian ingenuity, creativity and intelligence would be paramount in any resistance against them, likely being the pivotal ally for us. If they're on our bad side as well, then, you know, Chungus help us all. The Solarians would make a powerful enemy and a big player due to their skills, even though they are, of course, physically weaker than most big Chungus species. If the destroy ending is canon, like we said on the refusal ending, I believe the Solarians will work effectively to return to their glory days or to grab even more power. It seems that the Solarian government, like the Daltres for instance, is very skeptical of increased Krogan independence and general power increase for the Krogans. I expected that some other Solarians would want to reintroduce a working genophage, providing that you cured it or the Krogan evolved past it. Solarian governments have always acted in a kind of self-serving way, so I don't think they will be a super reliable ally, even if you side with the Daltres on the genophage question. So we should definitely keep an eye on them, and they have the potential to be a strong race, seeing as Solarian space and their homeworld wasn't hit as hard as the other Citadel races. So in conclusion, this is a tough one, but I have to be honest guys, I'd have to give the Solarians a Miranda tier alongside the humans, because Solarians have always lacked that special X factor with me, so I can't seem to place them any higher than the humans, but hey, you know, that's not a bad spot. It's the same spot as, you know, people like Shepard and Conrad Werner and guys like that, so I would personally be honored to be in that tier. But what do you guys think? Did I place these Solarians too high, too low? What do you think the Solarians will be up to in the next game? Will they be our allies or our enemies? Either way, this is Dr. Epics signing out. Like if cool, dislike if cringe. And remember, uplift that sub button. Hey guys, Dr. Epic here, back with some more Mass Effect racism for you. In this video we will rank the Turian race, as well as speculate on what their role for the next Mass Effect game will be. Thank you for clicking, and let's get to it. The Turians are another bipedal humanoid species. They are characterized by their avian or dinosaur features, metallic carapaces, and distinct face paint or lack thereof. The face paint is a culturally important feature to the Turians, as your face paint details which planet you come from and call home. Having no face paint makes you seem like a fence sitter apparently, and can let you be slammed with a devastating burn known as barefaced. This trend stems from Turian history as a society with many interstellar colonies, each with their own culture, though after the Unification War, Turian society is pretty much unified within the governmental structure known as the hierarchy. Turians are no strangers to war, and their society reflects that, in many ways reminiscent of a fascist human state and the society in Starship Troopers in regards to the glorification and reliance on military values and doctrines. I mean, all Turians go through something that they call boot camp. An admirable side of Turian society is that they all share a deep-seated desire to put the group's needs above their own, leading to a more selfless society. Apparently, the Turians make lousy individual entrepreneurs, but I guess you can say they make up for their shortcomings with a good work ethic and public service desire. The Turians' strong impact on the Mass Effect universe stems from their large and powerful military, donning the biggest fleet in the galaxy, if you look away from the Quarian migrant fleets. They serve the peacekeeper role, as it's usually referred to as, a trait they seem to have brought with them to Andromeda in the Apex units. They were instrumental in stopping the Krogan rebellions, delivering the genophage, and played a big role in the First Contact War against the humans. Turian haters refer to the Turians as imperialists since they kind of assimilate the other species and treat them as so-called client races like the Volus, establishing so-called protectorates, though to be fair the Volus themselves petitioned the Turians for client status. During the Reaper War, the Turians were crucial in fighting the Reaper forces. Their humongous fleet was a big war asset, and they, represented by their Primarch, had a noteworthy role in whether or not the genophage ended up cured or not. And a lot of other Turian characters have been very important to the course of the story, like the Turian Counselor, Saren, and Garrus. As for the role of the Turians in Mass Effect 4, I would expect to see a lot of the Turians in the Mass Effect 4 story. Like the Salarians, this is a race that has profound impact on the evolution of galactic politics and society. The Turians are the reason that the Krogan rebellions ended the way they did, genophage wars and all, and they're largely to thank for the defeat of the Reapers. Some of the bloodiest fighting took place on Palaven and in preservation of Turian worlds. The miracle at Palaven is a fantastic example of the brave and genius fighting the Turians and their allies had to pull off to give Shepard and the rest of the galaxy a chance at utilizing the Catalyst and ending the Reaper War. The Turian military has long been the galaxy's biggest and most powerful professional military of the generally powerful Citadel races, pound for pound. My impression while playing Mass Effect 3 was that the Turian military's efforts against the Reapers were far from being without cost, with many Turian colonies and even their homeworld being quickly and devastatingly overrun by the Reapers at massive cost to life and infrastructure. The Turians, alongside Batarians and humans especially, appeared to take the brunt of the Reaper menace and damage, being invaded early in the war and engaging the Reapers with large forces consistently compared to races such as, for example, the Azari and Salarians. What I'm saying is that for Mass Effect 4, it's not really given that the Turians will be the strongest military anymore. It's not given that there will even be a singular race powerful enough to act as a galactic policeman or peacekeeper. For this, the Krogans are actually, historically speaking, probably the best contender. This will largely depend on how far into the future the next game is set. The further into the future, the better armed and powerful the Turians will likely be. And another factor is obviously which ending is the canon ending. If the so-called destroy ending is what the next game is based on, then I imagine we see the Turians be more isolationist and step away a little from their traditional peacekeeping role, while replenishing their populations and repairing their society. General war reeling and unrest might result in a rejuvenation of the Unification War perhaps, as some colonies might see their chance to regain larger amounts of autonomy from the Turian hierarchy. Some Turians might see the state of the galaxy as being ripe for imperialist expansion, with probably many worlds laying dormant after Reaper abuse and completed harvests. I imagine the politics around claims on harvested worlds would be an interesting lore point for the next game. Other than something like that, or if some old tensions flare up due to human or Krogan expansion, then I can't really see the Turians acting as some malicious force in the galaxy in a destroy-ending scenario. The possibilities are, however, endless, especially if some Andromeda Turians decide to show up in the Milky Way. Who knows what they might contribute. I think we all want to see the Turian military fighting and hopefully decimating the Ket. Power level wise, I've always imagined the Ket on par or something around that level with the Turians. And I want our bird boys to humiliate those bony simps. If the control or synthesis ending is canon, then I imagine the Turians being an important player in those scenarios as well. The control and synthesis endings are two kinds of happy forever after type endings, so if those were to be the settings for the next story, something must have gone wrong, like the Shepard AI being evil, also known as the average renegade purist player, or the Reapers returning to being evil, or being used for evil by someone or something else. In such a world, I can basically only picture the story being kind of a rebellion type story, like Star Wars or Half-Life 2 on a galactic level, for example. Any remaining Turian military forces, or some of the massive amounts of Turian equipment littered throughout the galaxy, would be very helpful and perhaps a game changer in such a scenario. Who knows, Palaven and some secret moons might even transform into a sort of resistance capital against the enemy. Again, if some Turian reinforcements and their allies from Andromeda decide to show up, they could also alter the power scales, likely significantly, in the favor of the people allied with them. If the refusal ending is canon though, then things could get interesting, or very uninteresting. That's the ending where you reject the Catalyst alternatives and let the Reapers continue to successfully harvest the entire Milky Way and pave way for another cycle. If the Reapers are successful, then good game well played, I guess. Turians are dead forever except for those who manage to escape to Andromeda. If they decided to strike the Reapers while they were sleeping in dark space, I imagine Turian strategy and military traditions would be key in achieving that, though I imagine them seeing the necessity in bringing along other races of such an operation to be successful, especially given the Helios Turians' significantly smaller military capacity compared to the Milky Way hierarchy. If the Reapers are defeated by the next cycle in the refusal ending, like the cinematics for the refusal ending seems to show, then the only Turians in existence will be the Andromeda Turians, who as we know are currently struggling with the Ket and Scourge among other things. If they decided to return to the Milky Way, it would be interesting to see how the Turians would react to seeing a collection of potentially completely new species ruling the galaxy, like the Yogg for instance, or evolved Pyjax, who knows. I imagine the Turians want to reaffirm their traditions and independence. If they can't get their homeworld Palaven or any other planets to use, I imagine them immediately starting to plot a reconquest to bring back their former glory and avoiding becoming another migrant fleet. Turians do have a lot of cool lore, no doubt, and they no doubt have a lot of impact on the story and are very well represented and fleshed out in the games. Their design is also fairly unique and memorable. The X factor isn't super strong to me personally on these guys, but their potential for the next game is something that I really want to see. So, to summarize, I will be giving the decisive weight to how memorable and good the Turian characters in general are, so I will have to place the Turians comfortably in the Liara tier. What do you guys think though? Did I place them too high or too low? What do you think the Turians will contribute to Mass Effect 4? I guess that's all for now. This is Dr. Epic signing out. Like if cool, dislike if cringe. And remember, destroy that sub button with overwhelming force. Hey guys, Dr. Epic here. Welcome back to the channel and the series where we rank Mass Effect's races and speculate on their Mass Effect 4 roles. We have reached the end of the Citadel races roster now, and the final Citadel race is the Volus, also known as the Vol Clan, Biotic Gods, the best multiplayer class, or simply Small Chungus. So let's get to it, and thank you for clicking. The Volus are another fairly unique species, adding delicious flavor to the Mass Effect universe. And despite them being quite prominent and interactable through conversation and even through gameplay in multiplayer, they still remain mysterious, since we have never actually seen a Volus in all their natural glory, due to them having to wear those extremely clunky suits protecting them from their non-native atmospheres. I'm a sucker for gas-sucking aliens, dating all the way back to the Halo grunts, who look like little monkeys with pacifiers. In the old games, that is, not the new ones. Much like the grunts from Halo, the Volus aren't generally the best fighters, at least when you're not counting Yap Yap the Destroyer, as well as my multiplayer Volus Adept. They make up for this by offering an unrivaled competency in economic matters. Apparently these guys invented the credit system. Despite their many contributions to the Citadel Council, they still haven't gotten invited to the Cool Club as one of the council members, much to the dismay of some Volus politicians. Speaking of power, the Volus military is essentially non-existing, and Irune has apparently done away with the concept of state-waged wars, because Volus do not find any value in war, they just like business. They're really on that planetary Sigma grindset. They simply get their Turian masters to protect them as part of their client race deal with the Turians that they have. Besides Turian aid, the Volus rely mostly on air and naval force, rather than foot soldiers and landcraft. During the Reaper War, this didn't work too well for them, I'll say, and Husks swiftly started to terrorize the Volus population of their homeworld. Some 3,000 Volus attempted to travel to Andromeda Galaxy through the Andromeda Initiative, but some of them died when a crazy Quarian supremacist smuggled a deadly cross-species plague aboard. This also killed a lot of other races on board. RIP. But what about the role of the Volus in Mass Effect 4? What will our lovable little balls of fun get up to in a galaxy reeling from galactic war and Reaper harvest? The Volus, compared to, say, the Turians and Krogans, haven't impacted the galaxy nearly as much, at least not directly. Their biggest contribution to the galactic society is their role in establishing the galactic currency, and contributing to the effectiveness of galactic economy in general. Despite these achievements, the somewhat small scale of Volus influence can be exemplified by them still not being given power on the council level with a councillor position. So if the destroy ending is canon, then I would imagine a lot of Volus primarily would focus on rebuilding their own societies, perhaps in a more isolationist manner than before. I can see them helping in bringing the galactic economy back on its feet. I can further see the Volus being bolder in their politics, since the power balance has presumably been shook up majorly by the Reaper harvests and destruction. By extension, I can easily imagine some Volus demanding a bigger say than what they had before in exchange for them helping to bring the galactic economy back to life. Maybe we will finally see that Volus Councillor, who knows. I can further imagine some Volus perhaps being interested in either maintaining or moving away from their client relationship with the now weakened Turians. This is the golden opportunity to make revolutionary changes for Volus independence. Given that the Volus nature of hating war, my guess is they will seek to regain or simply modify their Turian relationship as a client race with the Turian protectors, as the Volus would still want someone else to protect them. My guess is further that if anyone, it's likely that the weakened Turians will modify the protectorate policies of the Turian hierarchy, and not the Volus, who might be forced by this. I'm expecting the Volus to be more important, not less, after the Reaper War. Especially so if some Volus from Andromeda decide to return and bolster or aid the Milky Way Volus. If the control or synthesis ending were to be canon, like I've said before, if there is to be conflict in the next game, these happy ending type scenarios need to have some terrible unforeseen consequence or development, like the Reapers being evil all along, or turning evil again due to an evil Shepherd AI or a malicious faction or agent. I would then imagine the story being kind of Star Wars-y or Half-Life 2-y on a galactic level. It's hard to see the use of the Volus in such a scenario. I'm sorry, they are weak soldiers in general. They rely too much on their suits and other people to do the work for them. I suppose they could perhaps aid in establishing and running some kind of underground railroad and managing resistance logistics, perhaps. Which is of course a very important thing to any war effort, but other than that I imagine them remaining in the shadows as side characters, once again. But if the refusal ending is canon, and that resulted in the complete squad wipe of the entire Milky Way races, then I would imagine the Volus will have had to either learn how to freeze themselves down into the future, using some technology that I can hardly believe that they designed on their own, and technically beating the Protheans in stasis technology, as we know that the infinitely more advanced Protheans tried this to save their species at least 2 times, and essentially failed both times, so I found this heavily unlikely. Other than that, the only Volus presence would have to be the Andromeda Initiative Volus. These will have to work together with other stronger species and alliances in order to wipe out the hibernating Reapers or any new generation of hostile Milky Way species, or an Andromeda villain like the Cat Jardan or whatever. Non-Reaper antagonists like these could be potential villains, even if the Reapers were defeated by the next galactic cycle or another powerful force. In conclusion, I really adore the Volus. They are unique, funny, and even though their speech is crazy annoying when you're trying to speedrun, it's still unique and entertaining to some degree. Their species is also a really interesting take on what a species with so vastly different biological needs than all the others would have to look like to simply survive outside their planet. Like the Drell, Elcor, and the Hanar, however, the Volus do not impact the story in any noteworthy way. Their only proper character can be argued to be Barla Vaughn or Din Korlak or something. They're all really minor characters, and that is fine, don't get me wrong, but if they were to give them more screen time and impact on the story, I might have bumped them up a spot, though you can argue that they then might have overstayed their welcome if we saw even more of the Volus. So to summarize, I have to commend their uniqueness and I really want to see them again, but do I want to see what's under the suit though? Well, I'm leaning towards no, but I wouldn't really care one way or the other if it was done in a proper way. All in all, I'll have to place the Volus in a Rex tier. It's kind of a weak Rex tier, because their voice is really annoying at times, and their attitudes towards you and others can be really annoying as well. Like who can forget the racist Volus in Mass Effect 2? What do you guys think though? Did I place the Vol clan too high or too low? What kind of shenanigans do you think the Volus will get up to in the next game? Are you excited to see them, or do you think that they can stay away as much as possible? One thing that has been really hammered into my brain doing this series is the fact that no matter what ending is canon, no matter what time skip in Mass Effect 4 from their previous game, the Reaper War has brutally and almost completely restructured the Milky Way ecosystem. It really should be pretty much anyone's game to claim the mantle of Big Chungus for the next millennia. That makes me, for one, really excited to see what will happen in the next game, and dear BioWare, please, just make a good Mass Effect game.
What do you want?
What I've always wanted. They were scared of what we'd find, terrified of what we might let in.
You're playing with things you don't understand.